and welcome back to Shamar Gaming. Today I'm going to be reading you the first part in the Ben Drowned a Creepypasta. Now this is the first post. Now this is going to be a multi-part series, so without further ado, let's get going. Okay, I need your help with this. This is not a copypasta, this is a long read, but I feel like my safety or well-being could very well depend on this. This is video game related, specifically Majora's Mask. And this is the creepiest shit that has ever happened to me in my entire life. Having said that, I recently moved into my dorm room, starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64 to play. I was stoked, to say the least. I could finally play all of those old games games of my youth that I hadn't touched in at least a decade. His N64 came with one yellow controller and a rather shoddy copy of Super Smash Bros. And while beggars can't be choosers, needless to say, it didn't take long until I became bored of beating up level 9 CPUs. That weekend, I decided to drive around a few neighbourhoods, about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up the local garage sales, hoping to score on some good deals from ignorant parents. I ended up picking up a copy of Pokemon Stadium, GoldenEye, fuck yeah, F-Zero, and 2 other controllers for $2. Satisfied, I began to drive out of the neighbourhood when one last house caught my attention. I still have no idea why it did. There were no cars out there, and only one table was set up with random junk on it. But something sort of drew me there. I usually trust my gut on these things, so I got out of my car and was greeted by an old man. His outward appearance was, for lack of a better word, displeasing. It was odd. If you asked me to tell you why I thought he was displeasing, I couldn't really pinpoint anything. There was just something about him that put me on edge. I can't explain it. All I can tell you is that if it wasn't in the middle of the afternoon and there were other people within shouting distance, I would not have even thought of approaching this man. He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked what I was looking for. And immediately, I noticed that he must be blind in one of his eyes. His right eye had that glazed over look about it. I forced myself to look to his left eye, trying not to offend, and then asked him if he had any old video games. I was already wondering how I could politely excuse myself for the situation when he would tell me he had no idea what a video game was, but to my surprise, he said he had a few old ones in a box. Or a few ones in an old box. He assured me he'd be back in a jiffy, and turned and headed back to the garage. As I watched him hobble away, I couldn't help but notice what he was setting on the table. Littered across the table were peculiar paintings, various artworks that looked like ink blots that a psychiatrist might show you. Curious, I looked through them. It's obvious why no one was visiting this guy's garage sale. These weren't exactly aesthetically pleasing. As I came to the last one, for some reason, it looked almost like Majora's Mask. The same heart-shaped body with the little spikes protruding outwards. Initially, I just thought that since I was secretly hoping to find that game at these garage sales, some Freudian bullshit was projecting itself into the ink blots. But given the events that happened afterward, I'm not sure now. I should have asked the man about it. I wish I would have asked the man about it. After sharing the Majora-shaped blot, I looked up and the old man was suddenly there again, arm's length in front of me, smiling at me. I'll admit, I jumped out of the reflex and I laughed nervously as he handed me a Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was a standard grey colour, except that someone had written Majora on it in black permanent marker. I got butterflies in my stomach as I realised what a coincidence this was and asked him how much he wanted for it. The old man smiled at me and told me that I could have it for free, that it used to belong to a kid who was about my age that didn't live here anymore. There was something weird about how the man phrased that, but I didn't really pay attention then. I was too caught up in not only finding this game, but getting it for free. I reminded myself to be a bit skeptical, since this guy looked like a pretty shady cartridge, and there's no guarantee it would work. But then, the optimist inside me interjected that maybe it was some kind of beta version or a pirated version of the game, and that all I needed to be back on Cloud 9. I thanked the man and then smiled, and he wished me well, saying goodbye then, or at least that's what I thought he heard. Or at least what it sounded like to me. All the way in the car ride home, I had a nagging doubt that the man had said something else. My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game To my surprise, it worked just fine. And there was one save file named simply Ben. Goodbye, Ben, he was saying. Goodbye, Ben. I felt bad for the man. Obviously a grandparent, and obviously going senile. And I, for some reason or another, was reminded of his grandson, Ben. Out of curiosity, I looked at the save file, eyeballing it. I could tell that I was pretty far in the game. He had almost all of the masks and 3/4 remains of the bosses. I just noticed that he had used an owl statue to save his game. He was on day 3 by the Stone Tower Temple and hardly an hour left before the moon would crash. I remember thinking that it was a shame that he had come so close to beating the game but never finished it. I made a new file named Link, out of tradition, and started the game, ready to relive my childhood. For such a shady looking game cartridge, I was impressed at how smoothly it ran. Literally just ran like a retail copy of the game for a few minor hiccups here and there, like textures being where they shouldn't be, random flashes of cutscenes at odd intervals, but nothing too bad. However, the only thing that was a little unnerving was that at times the NPCs would call me Link, and at other times they would call me Ben. I figured it was just a bug, a fluke, in the programming, causing our files to get mixed or something. It did kind of creep me out though after a while, and it was around after I had beaten the Woodfall Temple that regrettably I went into the save files and deleted Ben. I had intended to preserve the file just out of respect of the game's original owner. It's not like I need 2 files anyway. Hoping that would solve the problem. It didn't, and it didn't. Now NPCs wouldn't call me anything. Where my name should be, there was just a blank space. My save file name was still called Link though. Frustrated, and with my homework to do, I put the game down for a day. I started playing the game again last night, getting the Lens of Truth and working my way towards completing the Snowhead Temple. Now some of you, more hardcore Majora's Mask players, know about the 4th day glitch. For those who don't, you can Google it, but the gist of it is that right as the clock is about to hit 000000 on the final day, you talk to the astronomer and look through the telescope. If you time that right, the countdown disappears, and you essentially have another day to finish whatever you're doing. Deciding to do the glitch, to try to finish the Snowhead Temple, I happened to get it right on the first try, and the time counter showed at the bottom. Or the time counter disappeared. However, when I pressed B to exit the telescope, instead of being greeted by the astronomer, I found myself in the Majora boss fight room at the end of the game, the Frippy boxed in area, staring at Skull Kid hovering above me. There was no sound, just him floating in the air above. And the background music, which was regular for the area, but still creepy, immediately my palms began to sweat. This was definitely not normal. Skull Kid never appeared here. I tried moving around the area, and no matter where I went, Skull Kid would always be facing me, looking at me, not saying anything. Nothing would happen though, and this kept up for around 60 seconds. I thought the game had bugged out or something, but I was beginning to doubt that very much. I was about to reach for the reset button when the text on my screen appeared. You're not sure why, but you apparently had a reservation. I instantly recognized the text. You get that message when you get the room key from Anju at the Stockpot Inn, but why was it playing here? I refused to entertain the notion that it was almost as if the game was trying to communicate with me. I started to navigate the room again, testing to see if there was some sort of trigger that enabled me to interact with something here. Then I realised how stupid I was. To even think that someone could reprogram the game like this is absurd. Sure enough, 15 seconds later, another message appeared on the screen. And again, like the first one, it was already a pre-existing phrase. Go to the lair of the temple's boss? Yes, no. I paused for a second, contemplating what I should press, and how the game would react. When I realised that I couldn't select no, taking a deep breath, I pressed yes, and the screen faded to white with the words Dawn of a New Day with the subject I beneath it. Where I was ported to filled me with the most intense sense of dread and impending fear I have ever experienced. The only way I could describe the way I felt here is having a feeling of inexplicable depression on a profound scale. I am normally not a depressed person by the way I felt, but the way I felt here was a feeling that I didn't even knew existed. It was such a twisted, powerful presence that seemed to wash over me. I appeared in some kind of weird Twilight Zone version of Clocktown. I walked out of Clock Tower, as you normally do when you start day one, only to find that all the inhabitants were gone. Usually with the fourth day glitch you can still find the guards and the dog runs around outside the tower. This time they were all gone. What replaced them were the ominous feeling that something was out there in the same area as me, and that it was watching me. I had 4 hearts to my name, and the hero's bow. But at this point, I wasn't even considered for my avatar. I felt that I personally was in some kind of danger. Perhaps the most chilling thing was the music. It was the Song of Healing, ripped straight from the game itself, but played in reverse. The music would get louder, building up so, as if you should expect for something to pop out at you. But nothing ever did, and the constant loop began to wear on my mental state. Every now and then I would hear the faint laugh of the Happy Mask salesman in the background, just quiet enough so that I wasn't sure if I was just hearing things, or just loud enough to keep me determined to find him. I looked in all 4 zones of Clocktown, only to find nothing, no one. Textures were missing, West Clocktown had me walking on air, the entire area felt broken, hopelessly broken. As the reverse Song of Healing repeated for what must have been the 50th time, I just remember that standing in the middle of South Clocktown, realising that I never felt alone in a video game before. As I walked through the ghost town, I don't know whether it was the combination of the out-of-place textures and the atmosphere with haunting melody of the once peaceful and soothing song being butchered and distorted. But I was literally on the verge of tears and had no idea why. I hardly ever cry, something had gripped me here, and this powerful sense of depression was both foreign and crippling. I've tried leaving Clocktown, but every time I attempted to zone out, the screen would fade to black and I would just appear in another part of Clocktown. I've tried playing my ocarina, I wanted to escape, and I did not want to be here. But every time I played the Song of Time or Song of Soaring, it would say your notes echo far but nothing happens. By this point, it was obvious the game didn't want me to leave, but I had no idea why it was keeping me here. I didn't want to go outside the buildings, I felt that it would be too vulnerable there to whatever I was terrified of. I don't know why, but I came up with the idea that maybe if I drowned myself in the laundry pool, I could spawn somewhere else and leave this place. As I zoned in and ran towards the pool, that's when it happened. Link grabbed his head, and the screen flashed for a brief moment of the Happy Mask salesman smiling at me. Not Link. Me with Skull Kid's Scream playing in the background. And when the screen returned, I was staring at the Link statue from playing the song Elegy of Emptiness. I screamed as the thing just stared back at me with its haunting facial expression. I turned around and ran out and back into South Clocktown, and to my horror, that fucking statue followed me. And the only way I can compare this is like the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who. Every so often, at random intervals, the animation would play of the statue appearing behind me. It was like the thing was chasing me, or I don't even want to fucking say it, haunting me. By this point, I was on the verge of hysterics. But not even once did the thought of turning off the console occur to me. I don't know why, I was so wrapped up in it. The terror all felt so real. I tried to shake the statue, but it would literally appear right behind me every single time. Link started to begin to make weird animations I'd never seen him do before. He would flail his arms or spasm randomly around the screen before it would cut to the Happy Mask salesman smiling at me for a brief moment before I was face to face with that fucking statue again. I ended up running into the Swordmaster's dojo and ran to the back. I don't know why, but to my panic, I just wanted some kind of assurance that I'm not alone here. To my dismay, I found none. But, as I turned to leave, the statue cornered me in the cubby in the back. I tried attacking the statue with my sword, but to no avail. Confused and backed into a corner, I just stared at the statue, waiting for it to kill me. Suddenly, the screen flashed at the Happy Mask salesman, and Link turned to face my screen. Standing upright, mirroring the statue, looking at me along with his copy, literally staring at me. Whatever was left of the fourth wall was completely shattered, while I ran out of the dojo terrified. Suddenly, the game warped me to an underground tunnel and the reverse song of healing queued up again, as I was given a brief moment of rest before the statue started appearing behind me again. This time, aggressively. I could only take a few steps before it would summon behind me again. I hurriedly made my way out of the tunnel and appeared in southern Clocktown. As I ran aimlessly, in a sheer panic, suddenly a Redead screamed, and the screen faded to black as Dawn of a New Day appeared again. The screen faded in, and I was standing on top of Clock Tower with the Skull Kid hovering above me again, silent. I looked up, and the moon was back, looming just meters above my head, but the Skull Kid stared at me hauntedly with that fucking mask. A new song was playing. The Stone Tower Temple theme played in reverse. In some sort of desperate attempt, I equipped my bow and fired off a shot at Skull Kid, and it actually hit him, and it played the animation of him reeling back. I fired again, and on the third arrow, a text box appeared saying, "That won't do you any good, hee hee," and I was picked up off the ground, levitated upwards on my back, and then Link screamed as he burst into flames, instantly killing him. I jumped when this happened. I had never seen this move used by anyone in the game, and Skull Kid himself didn't have any moves. As the death screen played, my lifeless body still burning, the Skull Kid laughed and the screen faded to black, only to have me reappear in the same place. I decided to charge him, but the same thing happened. Link's body was lifted off the ground by some unknown force, and he immediately burst into flames again, killing him. This time, during the death screen, the faint sounds of the reverse song of healing could be heard. On my third and final try, I noticed that there was no music playing this time, that all there was an eerie silence. I remembered that in the original encounter with the Skull Kid, you were supposed to use the ocarina to either travel back in time to summon the giants. I attempted to play the Song of Time, but before I could hit the last note, Link's body once again horrifically exploded into flames and he died. As the death screen neared its end, it began to chug, as if the cartridge was trying to process something a lot at the time. When the screen came to, it was the same scene as the first 3 times, except this time Link was lying on the ground dead, in a position I had never seen him in the game before. His head tilted towards the camera, with Skull Kids floating just above him. I couldn't move, I couldn't press any buttons, all I could do was just stare at Link's dead body. After around 30 seconds of this, the game simply fades out with the message, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" before kicking you out to the title screen. Upon getting back to the title screen and starting again, I noticed my save file was no longer there. Instead of Link, it was replaced with Your Turn. Your Turn had 3 hearts, 0 masks, and no items. I selected Your Turn, and immediately, when I did, I returned to Clock Tower rooftop scene with Link dead and Skull Kid hovering above me again, with the Skull Kid laughing and looping again and again. I quickly hit the reset button, and when the game booted up again, there was one more save file added below Your Turn entitled Ben. Ben's save file is right back where it was before I deleted it, at the Stone Tower Temple with the moon almost crashing. I turned the game off at that point. I'm not superstitious, but this is way too fucked up even for me. I haven't played it all today. Hell, I didn't even get any sleep last night. I kept hearing the reverse song of healing music in my head, and remembering the sense of dread I felt exploring Clocktown. I drove back to the old man's house today to ask him some questions with a buddy of mine. No way I'm going there alone. Only to find that there's a for sale sign in the front yard, and when I rang the door, no one was home. So now I'm back here writing down the rest of my thoughts and recording what happened. Sorry if some of the grammatical errors or whatnot. I'm running on no sleep here. I'm terrified of this game, even more so now that I relived it a second time writing this all down. But I feel like there's still more than meets the eye, and that there's something calling to me to investigate this further. I think Ben is something in this equation, but I don't know what, and if I could get hold of the old man, then I would be able to find some answers. I need another day or so to recuperate before tackling this game again. It's already taken a toll on my sanity, I feel like, but next time I do this I'm going to be recording my footage all the way through. The idea to record only came to me at the end, So you see the last few minutes of what I saw, including Skull Kid and the Elegy statue. I'm going to stay in this thread for a little while longer before I fall asleep to answer any questions you guys might have hopefully listened to your ideas or theories or help me shed some light on this. Or maybe I should try to do, think I'm going to play Ben's file tomorrow to see what happens. Maybe I was supposed to do that all along. I don't believe in paranormal shit, but this was a little fucked up. But maybe this Ben guy is just really good at hacking/programming. I don't want to think about the alternatives if he isn't. That's the end of the copy-paste. I'm hoping that maybe this is some kind of running gag and the developers had, and the other people that have just gotten gag or hacked copies of the game like this just really scares me. So I think we end it there. I may, when I've mustered up the courage, watch this video. So if you guys enjoyed that video, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.